Hello, welcome to a new setup. It is true, the rumors are true. I have changed around my bedroom, so this is a new setup because I honestly wanted to change it up from just sitting in front of my bookshelf because I feel like it can get pretty repetitive pretty quick. And though I change around my bookshelf, like the knickknacks and stuff on it fairly often, the books are still going to be the same. So I felt like a change was needed. So today we're going to be talking about my wrap up for the month of July, and I'm going to be beating this face as I said in the intro. This is where my new desk is, so I may be lit from here because I only have a window on this side and I'll have a window on this side, so I might be a little like one side lit, but it's fine. We're just gonna roll with the punches. I haven't done my makeup on camera in quite a while. Today I'm just gonna be doing like a simple makeup look, not anything crazy. I'm not really looking for anything wild. It's like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, so I'm just gonna do like a soft, probably glam something. I don't know. I guess I'll talk about the makeup while I do it because if you're interested in makeup at all, like I am, then this will be fun. And if you're interested in books, like I am, this will be fun as well. So I'm going to be using the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, the first one, for my eyeshadow. And we're just gonna do my eyeshadow first because that's how I tend to live my life. I tend to do my eyeshadow first. I'm going to prime my lids using the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Cream and Concealer. And my goal is to finish this makeup look in half an hour. So it might seem feasible, but knowing me, I'm going to be, like I am right now, I'm going to be rambling for about 45 minutes. I have a notebook right here with all the books that I read and my thoughts on them. I don't know where I started, honestly. I don't know if I talked about War Storm by Victoria Aveyard, which is the conclusion to the Red Queen series. I finished that. That was the last book I read in the month of June. I don't know if I talked about it in my June wrap-up because I pre-filmed that video, so I'm not really sure, but I did enjoy that book. It was a pretty fun book to read, a pretty good conclusion in my opinion. I can't really talk about it because it spoils everything that happens in the first 3 books, so if you're at all interested, please read them. They're pretty great books. Victoria Aveyard did a really great job finishing the series, and I think she really outdid herself with that finale, and I stan her. So yeah. And then the first book that I read in the month of July is called Pumpkinheads, and it is by Rainbow Rowell. It's a graphic novel. I don't have it on me right now because, like I said, I borrowed the books from the library, so when I finish them, I return them, so I probably won't have a lot of the books that I'm talking about. And honestly, I'm doing my makeup, so I'm not going to pick up any books. It is a graphic novel about these 2 college kids who are working their last pumpkin patch on Halloween, and it follows them, and they're like, they've been working there forever. They know everyone there. They're like, one of them is the like MVP, which is like the best worker, employee of the month every month. He takes his job very seriously. They're both like besties. They always work together. They're like pretty much partners in crime, and it follows them on their last night working at the pumpkin patch and their mission to get the guy that is the main character, the guy main character to talk to his crush finally after years of just staring at her. And they go through all these hurdles all night to try to get him to finally talk to her and to say hello to her, to see what goes on. And it's just so cute. The animation style was super adorable, and I really enjoyed it. The story was really nice, and I really found it super cute. I'm gonna take this, ooh, maybe not. I'm gonna take this shade right here and put it in my crease. Yeah, I thought it was a super cute, this is a lot darker than I thought it was. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, this is really dark. I'm just gonna tap off everything, and I'm gonna go with, actually, let's go with the one right next to it, the lighter one, because that's really dark and I didn't want to do that. Yeah, it follows them on their last night, and it's super cute. The art style is super adorable, and the story, I really liked it. I really like the story. There's this cute ending, honestly, and it's like a friends to lovers type of thing, and it's really adorable. I honestly thought it was very, very cute, very well done. I like Rainbow Rowell's writing, and it was a super easy read. I read it in one sitting in like an hour and a half, I think, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was super adorable, and it's just a cute story, and I honestly recommend reading it like closer to the, like, not holiday season, but like closer to Halloween, because it's got very fall vibes. So I definitely recommend it like end of August if you are in the mood to read it at all. I think you would really, really enjoy it. It's a super easy read if you're behind on your reading goal on Goodreads, because it's just, you get it out of the way. It's like graphic novels are the easiest thing to get you back on track. Trust me, I would know. But yeah, it's super, super cute, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. I give it like a 7.5 out of 10 because it wasn't mind-blowing, but it was still pretty good. Then I read Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, which follows the story of this London British man who is like rich, and he's known to make bets, and he makes this bet that he can go around the world in 80 days and back to London. And it just follows his journey around the world in 80 days. There's a bunch of ups and downs, a bunch of plot twists. He goes to a bunch of different countries, and it's always in a rush. It's always like stress to the next level to see if he's going to make it or not. And yeah, it was a very, I think it's a classic. I don't know if a lot of people talk about it. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, honestly, but I grew up with my dad mentioning the story a lot, so I decided to read it because it's like one of his most referenced books, and he read it when he was younger, but he read the Arabic version, so I decided to read the English version, because if I were to read the Arabic version, I mean, this is already a classic, and if I were to read it in Arabic, I'd probably be even more confused. But yeah, I enjoyed the story. I understand why it's not talked about as often as all the other classics that everybody and their mother talks about, because it's not anything special. I still enjoyed it regardless. I think it's a nice story, nice to read about, fun to read. It's a very short, like compared to all the other classics that I've read, not that I've read many. This one was the shortest, and I really, really enjoyed it. I found it cute. It's a cute story. The main character, though, he can be an ass, low-key. He really can be an ass, but I enjoyed it nonetheless, and I recommend it if you're like interested in reading the story about a man who goes around the world and travels. If you like traveling, I think this is a fun story to read, but I don't think you're missing out on anything if you don't read it, honestly. It's cute and all, but there's a reason why it's not as well known as all the other classics that are out there. I gave it 3 stars because at some points it got frustrating because the main character can be such an ass sometimes. So yeah. By the way, if this eye looks a little weird, it's because I like did some shit to it the other day, and now I have a patch where everything is sticking and it won't go and it won't blend, and it kind of hurts, not gonna lie. So it's a dry patch, just forgive me and pretend it's not there. Then I read A Darker Shade of Magic and A Gathering of Shadows by Victoria Schwab, which I said I was going to read. I gave A Darker Shade of Magic 3.75 stars, and I gave A Gathering of Shadows 3.5 stars. I'll tell you why. I didn't finish this. I DNF'd the last book. This was a reread for me. I read the first book years and years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It's like a comfort book for me because of the time I read it back forever ago. I believe I read it when it first came out, so don't like quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I read it around the time where it was really, really popular on BookTube and everybody and their mother was talking about this series, so I read it because of the hype. But I really enjoyed it the first time around, so I decided to read it the second time around and finish the series. I read the first book in like 2 days because it's really, really easy to get through, and I already knew the story. And then I read the second book and I enjoyed it significantly less because it just... Let me read you my thoughts. This story is about this guy. His name is Kel. He's basically almost the last of his kind who's going extinct. There's magic involved, and he can travel between Londons. So there's Red London, Grey London, Black London, and White London, and he can travel between them and get things done for like the royal families and such. I really enjoyed the first book because it was a reread and it's like a comfort book and I've read it before, so I knew the story and I liked the story. And then I read the second book, and let me read you my thoughts. I said the second book I really didn't feel too strongly about. I liked that there was so much action, but it was very, very long and it felt like it was dragged out sometimes. And though I pushed through the slow parts, there was just so much information and like so much constantly happening. I DNF'd the last book 30% in because I just, at that point I had had enough, and the story was dragging on forever and I just didn't find it interesting anymore, and it felt like I was like doing homework, basically waiting for like to finish this series so I can move forward with my life. And I just didn't want to do that because I have like other books that I'm really looking forward to reading, and honestly I went through this phase this month where I just really didn't want to be reading books that I didn't want to read, because I have this thing where I force myself to read books that I don't want to read, and then I end up like dreading reading, and I don't want to put myself in a reading slump. I'm just going to use my finger because that's what I tend to do. This shadow is super dried out. I wonder if this is expired. Probably. Yeah, I have this thing where I like force myself to read books, and I really didn't want to like force myself to read anymore because I don't want to put myself in a reading slump. I barely just got back into reading this year because last year I didn't even hit my goal, and I'm like, usually I read 100 books a year, if not more. But last year I only read like 70, and that was because of like audiobooks most of the time. So I really didn't want to like put myself in a reading slump again because I barely got out of it. And though I enjoyed the series, the last book just felt like it was dragging on, and I just didn't like that. I didn't like that the story was taking forever to like move forward, and things just kept going wrong, and I just didn't find it interesting at that point, and I just honestly had it. And I would have read it if I needed to like continue for my reading goal on Goodreads, but honestly I'm a pretty decent amount in. Like I'm 90 out of 100 books in right now, and the year is not even like barely halfway, so I didn't want to like force myself to read something that I didn't need to read and wasn't going to make a difference to my reading like goal or anything. So I just DNF'd the last book because I didn't find any reason for me to continue with a series that I really didn't enjoy. I don't know what I just did, but I don't like it, so I'm going to blend until I fix it. To fix the darkness, I feel like I went too dark on it, honestly. I'm going to take the ColourPop Ritz Super Shock Shadow, which is a light like topper, I guess, that you can put on top of everything because it doesn't have like any base to it, any base color, and it's just sparkle. So I'm gonna put it on top of that and hope to God it lightens it up. Just got it all over my pants. That's great. And then once I fix this eye, or in my eyes, then we can talk about the next book series that I read. I think I'm done with series for a while. I think the bug has left me because I feel so burnt out by reading all these series that I've been meaning to read forever, and I marathoned so many of them that now I'm like, I just want to read standalones forever. Like, give me standalones. It's so funny because last month in my TBR, I was like, I'm in a like series mood because how can you fix a problem in a standalone in like 300 pages? And now I'm like, I think this past month I've read about, if not 300 pages, if not more, like 300 pages? No, 3,000 pages, if not more. Like seriously, I've read so many series in the past month and a half that like, you know, I'm pretty much burnt out. And please don't do that to yourself. I'm gonna take the Rare Beauty Always an Optimist Pore Diffusing Primer. This was like a birthday present from Ulta Sephora. The next series that I read was the Cruel Prince, or the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black, which follows Jude and Cardan, Prince Cardan, and Jude, who is a human who lives in the Fae world because her mom married a Fae and then she ran away to the Fae world. Or her mom married a Fae and that Fae was not nice and she didn't like the world, so she took her kids and she fled to the human world where she lived with her husband and her 3 daughters. And one day the Fae that she had married before finds them in the human world, and he basically murders the mom and murders the dad and takes the kids back to the Fae world. Even though only one of the girls is his daughter, he basically raises all three of them as if they were his kids. And it follows the story of Jude, who is a human girl in the Fae world, and she doesn't feel like she belongs, and everyone's bullying her, especially Prince Cardan, who is a Fae, and he's like a prince, and he's really, really popular. Everyone loves him, and everyone fears him. Yeah, I wouldn't say everyone loves him, but everyone fears him. And she lives her whole life being bullied by the group of Fae who tell her she's not good enough, she's not Fae, she should go back to where she came from, and that she's like worth nothing because she's a human, and she can get like under compulsion really easy unless she wears like a specific thing. And yeah, it's an enemies to lovers story, and it's very, very popular everywhere, like on TikTok, on BookTube. Everyone and their mother talks about this. The series has been like super raved about. I read the first book when it first came out, and I don't know when it came out, but it came out, and I read it. And I reread it now, and I continued on with the story, and I finished it. I read all three books, which are The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. And I have thoughts. So let's discuss my thoughts, because that's what we're here for. The first book was fun to read, right? Because it's like a nostalgic read. It's very, all of these books, all of the series is super easy to read. It's like 290 pages, 280 pages to like 300-ish pages. So I like ended up reading most of them in like 1 day or 2 days instead of like the usual 3 or 4 days that it usually takes me to finish a book, because they're super easy to read. It's a super easy story. There's not like a lot of like things you have to keep up with or like remember or like anything like super complicated or like you need to pay attention to. So I ended up reading most of the books in 1 day, in like 2 different sittings or 1 sitting, because it was super easy to read. And the first book obviously was the easiest because I had already read it before and it was a reread. I gave The Cruel Prince 4 stars, I gave The Wicked King 3.5 stars, and I gave The Queen of Nothing 4 stars. I enjoyed the first book immensely. I thought it was really, really nice. It's a good opening to a story. Holly Black really has a way of writing Fae, and I really, really enjoy her writing when it comes to that. And I think it was a good opening for a story. It's a lot more messed up than I remember it being, because everybody's just so cruel and so mean, and like I don't understand it, because it's like your kids, you know. Prince Cardan is an asshole. Jude is crazy. She's constantly doing some shit that she shouldn't be doing. And her sisters are a different story, honestly, truly. I don't understand her sisters most of the time, because they're just something else. And I don't know, it just felt like, you know, like it's a fun story to read, super easy. You know, it's like I was excited to continue on with the story because it's an enemies to lovers that everybody loves, and I love angst and I love enemies to lovers. Then I continued on with the second book, which was more or less crazy, crazier than the first book, which is not hard to achieve because the first book really didn't have anything crazy about it, honestly. The ending was shocking. I was on the edge of my seat the whole entire time. I know I gave it little stars, but that's because like it disappointed me a lot more than I expected it to, because I expected like an enemies to lovers, like a bunch of, are you not focusing on me, Miss Girl? I expected like this super intense enemies to lovers romance where there's a bunch of angst and a bunch of like craziness going around. That's not what I got. I don't know if I went into it having too high of expectations because I love enemies to lovers or what, but I was more disappointed than anything, honestly, truly. The romance was so rushed and lacked depth, like immensely, to me at least. It just felt like it was like the whole thing was like rushed and like didn't feel complete and didn't feel like a romance. It just felt like, okay, these 2 people are expected to be together, so we're gonna put them together. I think the books are just too short. They fall too short to even like be able to do the romance justice, at least in my opinion. It doesn't feel like they can do it any justice because the books are like 200 pages, so I don't know how much you can do in a series that's like 200 pages long, and it just ended up lacking a lot of depth and a lot of development. And the romance between Jude and Cardan is like one day they hated each other and the next they have been in love for years and they want to be together and suddenly they're married and all of that. So it's like, I don't know. It just kind of fell short for me, and I was kind of disappointed in it, not going to lie. I really went into it expecting a lot, but I walked out just being like, this feels unfinished, and the romance feels very unfinished. And though I love though I love Holly Black's writing, it just felt short in this series, and it was very, very disappointing. Then I read my nonfiction book of the month, which was Quiet, the Power of Introverts by Susan Cain, which I listened to on audiobook through my library. And this book basically talks about why there is a need in the world for introverts. Let me browse and then we'll talk about it. The people that are introverted, what they've contributed to this world, why you're an introverted person, and why you shouldn't let that be a bad thing. And I went into it because I myself am an introvert, believe it or not. I hate people, and if I can avoid talking to people and being outside in the outside world, I probably will. But I was very, very disappointed by this book. I gave it 3 stars because it's just repetitive. It's a bunch of repetitive information for like 8 hours, where she talks about like the same thing over and over again and the same studies over and over again. I don't know what I just did to this side. That's what I get for being backlit. Yeah, she just goes about the same information for 8 hours, and it's like, Miss Girl, you already stated all of this information. We already know all this information. Why are we going over it again? She cites the same studies over and over, and all the studies have the same outcome, is that like introverts are necessary, and introverts are creative, and introverts bring a peace to the world that we don't do. I promise I don't look as crazy. It's the lighting. Yeah, it's like the introverts are necessary and we need them in this life because they bring all this to the table, and extroverts are also necessary. And just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you're like not needed. And yeah, it just felt really repetitive with the same kind of information and the same stuff like rephrased in different ways, and I just it felt flat for me. I really wouldn't recommend reading it. I don't know how many ratings it has on Goodreads, but I was very, very disappointed in it because I really was looking forward to being empowered about being like an introvert, and I was not, which was disappointing. Let's talk about the next series that I read, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses. The whole series, which we have A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So I read all 4 books. Honestly, if you think about it, I've read a lot more than 3,000 pages. I think I'm more in the 4,000 pages range. So I gave A Court of Thorns and Roses 4 stars. I gave A Court of Mist and Fury 4.5 stars, and I gave A Court of Wings and Ruin 4 stars, A Court of Silver Flames 3.75 stars. Let's discuss. So all of the first 3 books, which is all the way until A Court of Silver Flames, I have previously read forever ago. I think I already said this in my TBR for last month. I read ACOTAR. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin way back in like 2016, I want to say, and it destroyed me personally, very much killed me, deep down to my core. It really destroyed me. I was in a deep, dark depression for forever, and I gave them all 4 stars. So as you can tell probably by what I just told you, that I have taken them down from 5 stars to 4 stars this time around. Not that they're bad or anything. I really enjoyed rereading them. I think the mental space that I was in just didn't allow me to enjoy them to the extent that I could have enjoyed them like last time. I was going through a lot mentally, and I think that really hindered my enjoyment of the series. In hindsight, I probably should have waited to reread them until a better time when I was happier, because I really, really enjoyed the series. I still very much enjoyed it. I love Rysand. Rysand is a king. Tamlin is a piece of shit. I still hate his bitch ass. You will never catch me saying I'm Team Tamlin. I think I really, really didn't like the first book in the series because of Tamlin, because I knew he was there and I knew what he had done later on in the series. Even though he wasn't as bad as he could have been, obviously, I just really didn't like vibe with him. I hate him. I like the series. I think it's a very nice series. I think Sarah J Maas has a way of writing Faye and where she's comfortable, and it shows. And I really enjoyed it. And then I took down the rating because just like I said, I wasn't doing mentally well to the point where I was like deeply infatuated by the series as I used to be back then, and which was really, really disappointing, honestly, on my part. It was nice to be back in that world where I knew everyone and I loved everyone, and it was an easy read. But I think at this point I had been like really like struggling to read or do anything. Why are we back to focusing on that? Focus on me, sis. Yeah, I think it was just hard for me to continue reading because, like I said, I was having a hard time like doing anything, let alone reading, and I was under a lot of stress this past month, so it kind of made it difficult. But I enjoyed the story regardless. I love Rysand and I love Farah and I love Cassian and everyone so much. And then I recently, like by recently I mean literally yesterday, last night, I finished A Court of Silver Flames, which is the newest one in the series that Sarah J Maas had just released, and I gave it the lowest rating out of all the ACOTAR series because I'll explain. It is so vulgar. Like when I tell you it's I never highlighted my face. I just highlighted my eyes. Well, how did I forget that? That's not okay. Yeah, it was very vulgar and there was so much smut, and listen, I've read my fair share of all that shit. But I just don't understand why we needed so much. Like within 100 pages, there was like at least like 50 pages worth of smut. And it's like, why? And at some points it wasn't really necessary to have those scenes. She just like threw them in there. And Nesta was such an irritating character to read about because she's like going through some shit and going through like trauma from the ending of the last book before it. And this story like mainly followed Nesta and Cassian and their like story and their like being mates and shit. And it's just so irritating because I love this series so much, and then I went into this book knowing that it had a lot of smut, but I just didn't know how much it would have, and it just had so much to the point where I was like, sis. The only redeeming quality about this series was Farah and Rysand and their story arc in that series, because it was super adorable and super cute, and it was good to read about them and them being like themselves and being a married couple. That concludes all the books that I've read for this past month. I'm going to put on a lip and we're going to do the outro. But yeah, you guys, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know down below if you did. Let me know what you've read this past month, if you share any of the same thoughts over the books that I've read this past month, or if you disagree and why. I would love to know. And thank you so much for sticking around. I hope this was okay. I know the lighting was not, but thank you for sticking around anyways and watching this video. If you have all this way, it's gonna take me forever to edit. So thank you so much for watching. Always remember to keep your head, heels, and standards high, to treat people with kindness, and I'll see you guys again next week with another video. Bye, you guys.